stay on with us. Let's also now bring in our guests. We have former diplomat Prabhu Dayal, who's joining us on the broadcast. We also have Alok Bansal. He's the director of India Foundation. Gentlemen, good afternoon. Good to have both of you with us here on CNN News 18. Prabhu Dayal, if I could begin the conversation with you, how do you see the visit of the Prime Minister to France in, being invited for the Bastille Parade? How significant is this visit of the Prime Minister?
Well, firstly, let me say it is a great honor for India that our Prime Minister has been invited as the chief guest for the Bastille Day Parade. As you were mentioning earlier, it's a very rare opportunity, very rarely given to foreign heads of state or foreign heads of government. So it's a big honor, and I feel very proud that our Prime Minister will be the chief guest this year. Secondly, with the Indian soldiers marching down the Champs-Élysées and the Rafales owned by the Indian Air Force doing the fly-past, it is not just symbolism. It is very meaningful symbolism, very powerful symbolism, because it emphasizes the defense cooperation between France and India. This cooperation is going to grow because we are going to sign the deal for 26 more Rafales for the Navy. These will be the Rafale M's. And we'll also be signing a deal for 3 Scorpion submarines. This emphasizes how the two countries will continue to work closely together in the defense area. And this sends out a message to countries like China, which always try and threaten India and which continue to cooperate together, like Pakistan and China doing, continuous cooperation, how to harm India. It sends a message that we are prepared and don't mess with us. Of course, let me also emphasize that since the visit of the Prime Minister coincides with the 25th anniversary of the strategic partnership between India and France, this is an opportunity to take the partnership forward. And there is cooperation, which is envisaged in various important areas like education, health, climate change, nuclear technology, space cooperation, you name it. So the idea is to widen and increase the cooperation which exists. And then, of course, there is this very important aspect of increasing economic cooperation, because both countries are important trading partners of one another, but there is a scope to increase this cooperation. At the moment, bilateral trade is a little less than 11 billion euros, and there are about 1,000 French companies which are operating in India, while about 210 Indian companies are operating in France. But there is a scope to take this economic partnership further. And I understand that there's going to be a meeting of the Indo-French Business Cooperation Council, coinciding with the visit of the Prime Minister, that will take things forward. And I must underline what the Prime Minister said in his address to the Indian diaspora in Paris, that steps are being taken which will be in the context of widening and increasing people-to-people contact and making things easy for the common man. For instance, the UPI payments, which will enable Indian tourists to make payments in Indian rupees, the opening of a new consulate of India in Marseille, then Indian students pursuing masters in France
get a 5-year
will now be able to get 5-year-long post-study visas. These are all directions which will make things easier for the common man. So I think it's a very, very important visit, and a very comprehensive plan of action is therefore for the two sides. And I think this road ahead is going to be one of increased cooperation.
Road ahead is going to be one of increased cooperation. Alok, let me bring you also in the conversation. Is it fair to say that President Macron is trying to woo India as a counterpart to China?
I think President Macron is trying to woo India. I am not trying to say that whether as a counterpart to China or something, because both France and India have always pursued independent foreign policies. And I think that is what has actually led to convergence between India and France historically. France, despite being a member of NATO, was actually pursuing an independent foreign policy right from the Charles de Gaulle's time. And similarly, India. And even today, India cherishes its strategic autonomy. And I think that is one of the reasons why there has always been some amount of traction, some amount of convergence between India and France. Even after we went nuclear, the first foreign leader to come for the Republic Day parade was President Jacques Chirac of France. So similarly, France is wooing. And at this point of time, India is undoubtedly an economic power, a military power, and the most populous country of the world. And I think this time we have a big shopping list. And if what is expected that if we get these Rafales and 3 Scorpions and we go in for a joint development of helicopter engines and jet engines, this will be a big achievement for India, and it will generate huge amount of jobs for France. For us, what is critical is that we would want France to relocate bulk of the manufacturing to India so that we have the technological transfer, and also Make in India moves a notch further. So that is what we are looking. And of course, one of the biggest achievements to my mind was when Prime Minister Modi said that France is joining UPI. I think this is very important. I think India's financial institutions are slowly but definitely making a global presence. UPI, RuPay card, all these are big things, especially in a world where some of the Western institutions have come under cloud, because SWIFT has come under pressure after what happened with the Russia-Ukraine war. So we need new systems for transfers and financial instruments that need to come. But undoubtedly, France and India have a history, and this Bastille Day is very important because this represents a very crucial moment in the French Revolution of 1789.
True.
And Indian soldiers will be marching this time, and Indian troops were the largest voluntary troops, I think, on the Allied side as far as fighting in the First World War was concerned. It was the largest voluntary army, and I think large number of Indians laid down their life for the defense of France in First World War. So I think it's a very important facet. And Prime Minister Modi being invited for this parade singly, because in the past, we have seen for Bastille Day parade, they have called about 5-6 leaders simultaneously. But India being invited there singly is important, because earlier also President Trump was the one who was invited, I think in 2017 singly. And before that, Prime Minister Manmohan Singh. So I think otherwise it's generally been a number of leaders simultaneously. So that shows the amount of importance that France gives to India, and the importance that it attaches to relationship with India.
I think that's a fair point that Alok is making. And Prabhu Dayal, I want to bring you back in the conversation. 2 things that I want to understand. One, when the Prime Minister is invited as a chief guest for the Bastille Day, a top honor is bestowed on him. People like Nelson Mandela and King Charles are people who've gotten that kind of honor in the past. What does it mean of India's positioning in the global scenario today? And 2, where do relations between India and France stand? And with the kind of optics that we are seeing today, where do you expect it going? Because what the Prime Minister said when he was addressing the Indian diaspora was very crucial. He said the Indo-France ties are important in world order. And what are the kind of things that bring India and France together? It's art, fashion, and a lot more that keeps us united. So how do you see India's positioning, and where do you see the relations between both the countries from here on?
Well, first of all, your question relating to the standing of India. In May, our Prime Minister was invited as a guest participant in the G7 summit in Japan. Immediately after that, he was invited as a state guest to Australia, and we all know the rousing welcome he got there, not just from the Indian community, but from the Australian government, which went out of its way to make sure that there was nothing that was left unturned to honor the Prime Minister of India. Then after that, next month in June, he went to America as a state guest, and we all know the importance which the American government attached to the visit, and the very important deals that were signed between India and the United States. And now, in July, he has come as the chief guest to the Bastille Day parade in France. So all this emphasizes, firstly, that our Prime Minister has a very high international standing.